on the air with a jury picked and seated in a critical moment in the historic trial of a former president. And honestly, it all came together in just the last 30 minutes, setting up opening statements maybe as soon as Monday in Donald Trump's case. Coming up, our breakdown of how the prosecution may try to frame that opening, what happens from here with the alternates, and who exactly are these everyday people picked to decide Donald Trump's fate. We bring it to you live from downtown Manhattan. Also tonight, new answers on how 911 went down for millions of Americans, and the mystery still out there in one state, sending officials scrambling. Then, in tonight's original, we go one-on-one with the woman denied health care help from a pharmacist in a state where the overturning of Roe versus Wade upended all the old rules. Plus, be like Mike? How about be like Caitlin? The potentially groundbreaking shoe deal for the WNBA superstar that could net Caitlin Clark millions. And why Taylor Swift fans are desperate for any kind of clues about her new album, set to drop just a few hours from now. They are down bad. The first ever reporter hired just to cover her will be here live later in the show. Hey, I'm Hallie, and tonight it is the first of what may be many milestone moments in an unprecedented trial. The jury, 12 people, now seated, plus one alternate in the criminal trial of Donald Trump. There still needs to be 5 more selected, 5 more alternates, and the judge late today says he's hopeful they'll finish that process tomorrow, setting up openings maybe as soon as Monday. But this day, with 2 jurors sent home, a bunch more picked, it's all highlighting the challenges of a trial at this particular moment in an election year for this particular person, Donald Trump, in this particular city, with one dismissed juror. Saying more about that with their Yasmin Vasugian as you are looking live at former President Trump speaking. We're going to listen in for just a quick second before we bring you that juror. Let's just listen.
On a trial that really is a very unfair trial. These are all stories. This is over the last few days from legal experts. This is Wall Street Journal editorial. But all of these are stories from legal experts saying how this is not a case. The case is ridiculous. This is another one. The case is a ridiculous Trump indictment. It's missing fraud. There is no fraud. All of these stories are stories of how, and these are done by the experts and editorials. Bragg falsified business record, and he falsifies them. He's the one. He's the fraud. But take a look at all of these are stories. You see them here. Bragg's indictment even falls as an indictment.
You are listening there to Donald Trump. Look at him. He's paging through what looks to be dozens of pages of paper printouts of various news stories here. Continue what we have seen from him since even before this unprecedented criminal trial began, and that is railing against what he sees as political persecution against him. Interesting that he's talking about the merits legally of this case, because coming up in a couple of minutes, we're going to have more on how the prosecutors are expected to frame their opening argument, not as a hush money trial, but as an election interference case. We'll get to that in our breakdown in just a second. But first, I want to bring in Vaughn Hilliard, who's outside the courthouse live for us in Manhattan. So, Vaughn, the split screen moment here. Court, I guess, is wrapping up for the day. If Donald Trump's out, that tells me that everybody's heading home, getting ready to come back tomorrow when they pick those 5 alternates. Talk us through this day, because 45 minutes ago, an hour ago, we were talking about the painstakingly slow grind to get this jury selection. Within just the last hour, we've seen the jury seated, one alternate selected. Walk us through it.
And suddenly we have a jury. We have 12 jurors. They still need 6 alternates, but you said it, Hallie. Well, you were introducing the show here. The court has formally been dismissed for the day, and tomorrow the court will come back into session as they look for those 6 alternates. But to Donald Trump's point there, he calls the case ridiculous and that the legal scholars are on his side. Well, this is a moment where his team, his legal team, is going to be able to defend him in court, and he himself will be able to testify as well. We should note it was the citizens of New York who chose to indict him through the grand jury process, and now it'll be 12 New Yorkers who were selected through this process. His defense team had the opportunity to challenge and strike each of these individuals from serving on the jury, and so now this is going to be the opportunity where Donald Trump and his legal team are going to be able to make the case that he is being unfairly prosecuted, and hopefully for him either be found innocent or at least get a hung jury, which with 12 jurors, all it takes is one of them to rule him not guilty to come up with a hung jury, Hallie.
What's also interesting, Vaughn, and let's just kind of roll with this for a second here, because former President Trump, as he's speaking, we're not going to listen live. We've got our team monitoring in case he says things that are newsworthy. We'll dip into it. But one of the things he's talking about is what we've heard from him, this idea that he's stuck in the courtroom and not on a campaign trail, saying he could have been in places like Georgia, New Hampshire, North Carolina, et cetera. Instead, he's stuck in New York. Part of it, though, Vaughn, is the way that his campaign has tried to essentially collide the courtroom and the campaign trail, right? I mean, he is using this in many ways as a way to rally his base around him.
Absolutely, and he has a campaign rally planned this upcoming weekend here in Wilmington, North Carolina. He was in central Pennsylvania this last weekend for a campaign rally. He will have Wednesdays off. He can go on the campaign trail on Wednesdays if he desires. But you said it. Donald Trump is not, clearly as he's talking to the cameras, running away or trying to make this be a quiet thing, right? He's calling attention to the fact that there's a trial. And I talked to a close ally of his just earlier this afternoon, and I said, you know, do you want this kind of be in the background? And that individual pushed back, saying, quote, we want people to watch what's happening. It's the first communist-style show trial to come to America. For Donald Trump and his political allies, they want to try to make the case that he's being unfairly prosecuted and make the case to the American electorate that regardless of what these 12 jurors ultimately decide, that this in New York City is an unfair venue for him, full of New Yorkers that don't like him, though it was his home until just a couple years ago. But this is the case that they're going to try to make, because the reality is, whether they like it or not, whether Donald Trump likes it or not, there is a criminal trial that is going to continue over the next 6 to 8 weeks.
I want to play for folks because as this jury has gotten assembled, right, it does, as we said at the top of the show, highlight the challenges right now of this case at this moment with this particular person, this former president and current candidate. Here's what one dismissed juror told our Yasmin Vasugian not too long ago. Let me play it.
Everybody has biases and, you know, stereotypes in their mind. So you have to be a really, deep and fair person, which is very hard to do, right?
Vaughn, you, I know, have been talking with people who are in and out of that courtroom here, too, right?
I have, and I think the difficulty of this year is the level of scrutiny that is going to be on these jurors. We now know who the jury is here, and undoubtedly, they've got friends, they've got family with strong political convictions. I think probably everybody watching right now would agree that they've got close ones in their lives that have an opinion on whether Donald Trump should be guilty or not 6 months from the general election. And this morning, there was one juror who was dismissed, who was initially seated, but came back today and said just yesterday, heard from friends, family, and colleagues who asked her if she was, in fact, a juror, and she said that she felt pressure, that she led her to believe that she didn't know if she could be impartial during this 6 to 8 weeks of proceedings. And she was then dismissed and excused from being on the jury. And so this is a really tough process for just general New Yorkers who are now find themselves being the ones to determine Donald Trump's level of guiltiness.
So the jury made up of 7 men, 5 women, 1 alternate selected, 5 more set to be selected, potentially all tomorrow. We'll see. Vaughn Hilliard, you'll be watching all of it. Thank you. Let's take a step back here, right? Remember what this case is all about fundamentally. Donald Trump facing these 34 felony counts, accused of basically lying on business documents, allegedly to cover up payments he made to former adult film star Stormy Daniels during the 2016 campaign. Now, in plain English, as you look at the web here of the former president's legal issues, a lot of people, including us, have shorthanded this one as like the quote-unquote hush money trial, right? That's what you hear it as sometimes. And many legal experts have suggested this may be the weakest case because, in their view, okay, if he lied on internal records, what would be the harm to the public? But the Manhattan District Attorney says it goes way beyond that. Here's our breakdown. In the orbit of Donald Trump's trials, the one in New York has headlines that seem tailor-made for the tabloids. A possible sex scandal involving Mr. Trump, an ex-porn star, Stormy Daniels, and $130,000 in so-called hush money payments paid to her by his former fixer, Michael Cohen. Mr. Trump denies having a sexual relationship with Daniels, but the alleged crime recorded in checks signed by Mr. Trump to reimburse Cohen. And Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg suggests there's more to it than so-called hush money.
So it's an election interference case.
Not interference in 2020, but the first time around, the 2016 election. Bragg says those checks, allegedly to try and silence Stormy Daniels, were part of a scheme by Mr. Trump to keep the alleged affair from voters in 2016.
That payment was to hide damaging information from the voting public.
Bragg never actually even called it hush money when he announced the charges. He argues then candidate Trump did this to cover up other crimes, like the campaign finance laws Michael Cohen pleaded guilty to in 2018 and served 3 years in a federal prison for. The DA repeatedly making the case publicly. This goes beyond a sex scandal.
The case is not, the core of it's not, money for sex. We would say it's about conspiring to corrupt a presidential election and then, lying in New York business records to cover it up.
That framing echoed in part by the judge, Juan Merchan, who in a court filing wrote he'd tell a jury that these allegations have to do with falsified business records to conceal an agreement with others to unlawfully influence the 2016 presidential election. All of it a potential preview of how the prosecutor's opening statements may go. So what about Team Trump's opening statements, right? For them, according to legal filings, it's more about, in their view, look, the former president simply didn't want to be embarrassed. It has nothing to do with influencing voters. And more importantly, they say that means it is not illegal. More on this story, obviously, throughout the night, tomorrow, and then Monday right here on NBC News Now as we follow all of it. Just some other big headlines tonight, though, and there are many of them. Right as we were coming on the air, officials on Oahu say their 911 system stopped working for a little while, not even 24 hours after a separate outage left millions of people across 4 other states without a way to contact first responders overnight. Now, we don't know if the 2 outages are related at all, but it comes as we're getting some answers as to what may have happened overnight. Seems like the issue is related, at least partly, to a comms and telecom company called Lumen Technologies. In a statement to NBC News, a spokesperson is apologizing to customers in Nevada, South Dakota, and Nebraska. They say this outage happened when a third-party company was putting in a poll and then caused what some officials say was this unprecedented situation. Here's what else we know tonight. Law enforcement officials tell us there's nothing to indicate that this was part of a cyber attack or something that somebody did on purpose. That's important to note. The FCC is looking into this. And what we still don't know, what the root of this issue might have been down in Texas, which was the 4th state affected by the outage, because Lumen says it doesn't actually provide 911 services there. Brian Chung is joining us now. So, Brian, can we start with what's happening in Hawaii with what happened not too long ago on Oahu? This, a lot of attention in the course of the last 24 hours on these 911 systems. And now this. What's up?
Yeah, well, it appears that the outage in Hawaii lasted about 20 minutes ago. Rather, it lasted about 20 minutes. It started about 2 hours ago, so it seems to be resolved. And in a statement to NBC News, Lumen said that they do not provide services to Hawaii, so this is not a situation that would be tied to what they experienced earlier on today. But regardless, what happened overnight was very much a scary situation where you had people in multiple states, as I mentioned, or as you mentioned, rather, Nebraska, South Dakota, and also Nevada, not being able to access 911 services. In many cases, emergency departments like fire and also police were advising people to try to text 911, which is a service that is available in many jurisdictions, as well as try to use alternative ways like dialing the 10-number local phone for those emergency services to reach if you were in an emergency. So a very interesting situation there. One thing that's worth noting is that there were a number of police departments and fire departments that noticed people trying to dial 911 to test if they were able to contact them. They say, don't do that. We saw the same thing play out in the AT&T outage about 2 months ago. They say only call 911 if you are actually in an emergency, Hallie.
We know this, as we've laid out here. Initial thinking was like, could there have been some sort of cyber attack component here? That does not seem to be the case. That said, there have been there's this broader question, perhaps, when you look at just a couple of months ago that AT&T had a big outage, of the vulnerability of these kinds of systems in the first place. How should we be thinking about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, and this is a really relevant question with regards to first responders, because there's an upgrade that's trying to be done nationwide through what they call Next-Gen 911. This is a process that preceded even the AT&T situation from earlier this year. And the Department of Homeland Security, interestingly enough, just earlier this week had been warning of the potential for a hack of that very, very important system. Take a look at what they said. They said, quote, they also represent new vectors for attack, broadening the concerns of and complicating the mitigation and management management of cyber risks across all levels of government. And again, I want to emphasize that it wasn't a hack that was to blame for today. Again, as Lumen said, it was really basically just a severed line that was related to maintenance of a poll from a third party. So again, it could be something as simple as that, but these attacks very much remain a big issue going forward, Hallie.
Brian Chung, thank you very much. Yet another close call tonight, this one here in Washington, after a plane tried to cross the runway while another plane was getting ready to take off. Listen.
Stop, Southwest 2937, stop.
Stop,
We stopped. We were cleared to cross runway 4.
Okay. I mean, you heard it there saying stop, stop. He said we stopped. Apparently, this air traffic controller told a Southwest flight to cross the runway right as a JetBlue flight was about to take off from the same runway. Fortunately, nobody got hurt. Emily Aketa is joining us now. Boy, has it felt like we've been talking about these close calls at airports quite a bit. Now we're learning it had to do with air traffic control, apparently. Talk us through it.
Hey there, Hallie. Yeah, certainly a hair-raising incident at one of the nation's busiest runways, and you can hear it in the voice of those air traffic controllers, the panic, the urgency in that moment. Here's what we know as of right now from the FAA, and according to our sources, we know that a Southwest plane was given clearance to cross a runway to then reach the runway it was supposed to get to do its takeoff. Meanwhile, around the same time, we're told that a JetBlue plane was preparing to take off, coming within 1,000 feet of one another, according to a source, so really speaking to the seriousness of this close call. We spoke with an industry expert who discusses what could have gone wrong here. Take a listen.
My reaction is something went wrong with the air traffic control instructions here. The FAA is challenged right now with a reduced controller workforce, and that means bringing on new trainees and stressing the system by having to give instruction to these trainees.
So let's zoom out for a moment. This close call comes literally the day before the FAA is set to begin a 4-day hiring period for air traffic controllers in an effort to bring on 1,800 new people just this year and to address something that we've covered so extensively, the severe shortage of air traffic controllers. I will tell you tonight, the FAA tells us that the number of close calls is actually trending downward, and both airlines say they are working with federal investigators to figure out what exactly went wrong, Hallie.
Emily Aketa, thank you so much for that. A big deal moment tonight for a big deal family in American politics, with a whole bunch of the Kennedys coming out today against one of their own and choosing to endorse President Biden's re-election. Watch this.
President Biden has been a champion for all the rights and freedoms that my father and uncle stood for. That's why nearly every single grandchild of Joe and Rose Kennedy supports Joe Biden.
15 Kennedys, including Carrie, who you just heard from there. She's the sister of RFK Jr., who, of course, is running a third-party race there. Carrie, she's saying that President Biden represents a vote to, in her words, save our democracy. The endorsement comes as some Democrats worry that her brother's candidacy could hurt them and help hand the election to former President Donald Trump. RFK Jr. himself responding on X, saying, I am pleased my family is politically active. He says it's a family tradition. We are divided in our opinions, but united in our love for each other. Mike Memoli is joining us now. So this is so extraordinary for a couple of reasons, right? First, where it's happening, Pennsylvania, key battleground state. Second, because of the fact that you have not just the siblings of a candidate coming out to endorse somebody else, but the siblings of a candidate who has put his own family and family name in so many ways front and center in his campaign. Tell us more.
Yeah, Hallie, well, I mean, this was a moment that was months in the making, and you could say the seeds were planted in the White House's Rose Garden. We all remember that photo of 3 generations of Kennedys, 4 different branches of the family with President Biden after they celebrated St. Patrick's Day together. That was a very powerful image that spoke to what we saw today, which was the eventual endorsement by members of the Kennedy clan, including his own siblings, RFK Jr.'s own siblings. Think about it this way in terms of what we saw. For President Biden, RFK Jr. represents a potential political spoiler. We see that in just about every poll. There was a new Quinnipiac poll today, for instance, that had President Biden leading Donald Trump in a head-to-head matchup, 48-45. But if you make it a 3-person race, including Kennedy, both candidates, Trump and Biden, drop into the 30s, with RFK drawing significant support. A Reuters poll also showed RFK Jr. with 16% of the vote in a potential 3-way race. So, yes, he is a potential political spoiler. The Kennedy family, though, looks at this as a potential legacy spoiler for the family's legacy of public service. And they are really concerned about the fact that this their presence of their brother, their cousin, their uncle could tip the balance to RFK Jr. And so they wanted to make a big impact. They tried to do that in the most important state to President Biden, that's Pennsylvania. What we also saw today, Hallie, I know is close to your heart, because President Biden yesterday raised some eyebrows.
We saw Wawa.
Yesterday, though, he visited a Sheetz. And so today he visited a Wawa.
Pale imitation of a Wawa Sheetz.
And
Sorry
so
to my
if you're
Western
trying
PA
to,
friends.
demonstrate your bipartisan bona fides in a key state, reach those swing voters, he's now played both sides of the argument. But he tried to get a shake at the Wawa in Philadelphia today. Had a little trouble with the digital kiosk, I think, but he ultimately got what he wanted.
Can I just tell you, first of all, thank you. My team knows that if there is a Wawa involved in political coverage, it must be in tonight's broadcast. So I appreciate you and them for doing that. But I want to go back to the RFK Jr. thing for a second, because I think there's two questions here, right? Number one, he's trying to capitalize, as you say, on his family legacy. How powerful is that? And number two, who does his candidacy actually hurt more? Democrats are clearly somewhat concerned about this outside the Biden orbit. But should Republicans be more concerned?
Well, the Kennedy name, of course, has significant cachet in American politics still. There's significant nostalgic value, especially for Democrats, in that Kennedy name, which is driving the concern on the part of the Democratic Party. You only need to look at President Biden himself, who talked today about the fact that when he sits at the Resolute desk in the Oval Office, looks ahead, he sees the bust of RFK in the Oval Office to ask, what would Kennedy do in this situation? And in a race where the margins are going to be razor thin, there is concern that voters, especially those who are going to tune in much later in this election and not like both of the options from both major parties, will see a familiar name and vote for him. And that's why you're seeing this urgency today, and why the Democrats have marshaled an effort not only to message against RFK Jr., but even to try to throw him off the ballot in some of the states where he's seeking to gain access.
Mike Memole, live for us outside the White House. Thank you. Also here in Washington right now, this really big funding fight, this money fight, is picking up more steam on Capitol Hill. But the bigger question tonight, can the House Speaker get these huge $95 billion foreign aid packages passed for Israel and Ukraine without losing his job? Like, can he do it and still keep the speakership? The honest answer is nobody is really quite sure, because some members of Johnson's own party are threatening to oust him. Speaker Johnson himself is late tonight shutting down talk about changing the rules to make it harder to kick him out of his position. Reminder, a position he's only held for 6 months. And Johnson tells our team that getting removed as Speaker is not even his biggest worry right now.
You decided on proceeding with changes to the motion to vacate rules. Speaker Johnson.
No, we're focused on the supplemental right now.
He says we're focused on it right now. This aid talk comes as Israel's getting ready to retaliate against Iran. And as it relates to Ukraine and Russia, as Ukraine says they will lose this war if they do not have more U.S. support. Making things even more complicated, the House is trying to package this foreign aid bill with a potential ban on TikTok, unless its Chinese owner sells it. TikTok is not thrilled, as you might imagine, putting out a statement calling this new move a cover that could devastate millions. Sahil Kapoor is joining us now. We love a bucket on this show. There's two of them here. There's the leadership fight, and then there's the actual aid package. They are intertwined, but for the purposes of this conversation, let's separate it and start with Mike Johnson. Come Sunday, come Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, does he still have his speakership?
Both those issues are a live ball right now, Hallie, and House Republican leaders, including Speaker Johnson, are in the process of teeing up a series of votes separated on these various bills: Israel aid, Ukraine aid, assistance for Taiwan and the Indo-Pacific, and a fourth package of various national security priorities, which we'll get to in a moment. But one thing that Speaker Johnson is trying to do is get this through the Rules Committee and get this on the floor while minimizing his right-wing opposition. He did just earlier today, just about an hour or so ago, take off the table this idea of changing the motion to vacate threshold. This is what some conservative members who are not explicitly in favor of removing him have insisted that he avoid doing, that the motion to vacate should stay as is. He said in a tweet that it's harmed the office and the House majority, the rule as it is, but he also noted that it requires a majority of the full House to change the rule, and he said he doesn't have that. So taking that off the table. Now, what is a motion to vacate? This is a familiar rule to anyone who's followed this House of Representatives over the last year, because it's what happened to former Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy. It's a vote on removing the Speaker. Any one member of the House under these Republican rules can bring up the motion, and it needs a simple majority to pass. Now, the wafer-thin margins here mean that even a small number of Republicans could vote with Democrats to remove Mike Johnson, and he would be out of a job immediately. The difference here, as opposed to what happened with Kevin McCarthy, is that Democrats seem a little bit more willing to rescue him, to vote down the motion to vacate in the event that he gets potentially tossed as a result of bringing Ukraine aid to the floor, which is something they've demanded for a while.
Okay, so drama on that front. There is also on the personnel front, if you will, also on the policy front, right? Let's talk about now this potential aid to both Israel and Ukraine, both involved in wars in their regions here. Will those packages cross the finish line?
The goal for Johnson right now is to get them through the Rules Committee and onto the floor and pass them by Sunday evening. Now, if he gets them to the floor, Hallie, and gets that process triggered, then they're very likely to pass. And with different coalitions, Israel aid has overwhelming Republican support. A lot of progressives can vote against it, and it can still pass. Ukraine aid has overwhelming Democratic support. A lot of conservatives in the Republican caucus can oppose it, and it would still pass. And the other bills are somewhat less controversial in terms of the numbers. One thing that is in that fourth bill, that hodgepodge of national security issues, is TikTok changes, specifically a proposal that would force TikTok's owners to sell to a different company, so it's no longer effectively under Chinese control, or TikTok would be banned here. This is very much a possibility that this could pass and get to Biden's desk. TikTok right now is in more danger, I would say, than it ever has been of getting banned, simply because this bill, if it passes the House, will have escape velocity in the Senate. There's an enormous amount of determination among Democrats as well as many Republicans to get Ukraine aid to President Biden's desk and to get this done. So one thing this does, unlike the last TikTok ban, which gave 6 months to sell or be banned, this extends it to 9 months with the option for the president to make that a year, Hallie.
Sahil Kapoor live for us on the Hill. Thank you very much. To Maryland now, where a high school student's in police custody, charged with threatening mass violence in connection with an alleged school shooting plan. This is in Montgomery County, Maryland, right outside of Washington, according to court documents obtained by NBC News. You see the court papers here alleging that 18-year-old Andrea Ye, who goes by Alex, wrote a 129-page document that includes a strategy on how to carry out the attack, even contemplating targeting an elementary school, allegedly wanting to be famous. Police are expected to give more details in a news conference set for tomorrow. Yamiche Alcindor is joining us now. So more answers, Yamiche, potentially coming then, but already a lot of information coming out of these court documents as to how the officials here investigating carried this out.
That's right, Hallie. And it really is a disturbing and striking thing to see here in Maryland. This document really is striking when you go through it. Officials and authorities have really been dealing with this for more than a month. We should walk through the timeline of all of this. So on March 3rd, a witness contacted the Baltimore County PD. Now, that witness is someone who spent time in a psychiatric facility with Alex Yee. They were worried. They thought a school shooting was imminent. Police then obtained a search warrant for Yee's Gmail. That's where the access to this manifesto or this memoir, some say that Yee called it, that's where that came from with his Gmail account, because it was a Google Doc. Then on March 5th, Yee messaged on Discord, which is a site that they actually ended up being kicked off of for posting about violence. Yee wrote, "My friend reported me to the police for a book I'm writing." On March 6th, Yee is hospitalized. There had been a number of hospitalizations dealing with suicidal and homicidal thoughts, according to police charging documents. Then on March 21st, there was a search of Yee's home. And then on Tuesday, Yee was arrested. Now, we should note now that Montgomery County Public Schools, they put out a statement. I want to read part of it to you, Hallie. It says the charges are extremely serious, involving alleged threats to harm others. The student, who has not physically attended an MCPS school since the fall of 2022, has been actively participating in lessons through a virtual program called Online Pathways to Graduation. It's really important to note that, because authorities here said that there was real worry that this teenager, this 18-year-old, could at some point shoot up a school. That's why, of course, now they're charged with making a threat of mass violence, Hallie.
Yamiche Alcindor live for us there on the ground in Montgomery County. Yamiche, thank you. A lot more still to come on the show, including who the Florida governor is taking on now. You may be surprised to hear it's the Satanic Temple. Plus, the fast food worker one mom describes as her hero tonight. The terrifying close call when we're back. A potential fight now brewing between Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and the Satanic Temple. Oh, yes, that is not a misspeak. It has to do with this bill that DeSantis just signed into law that would let Florida public schools bring in volunteer chaplains as a resource for students. It's controversial for a bunch of reasons here, right? Critics say the kids could end up getting religious advice they don't want or feel uncomfortable because the chaplains could have a different religious background than they do. Case in point, the Satanic Temple telling our team they're planning on training and placing their own chaplains in Florida schools. Governor DeSantis today saying that's not going to happen.
We're not playing those games in Florida. That is not a religion. That is not qualifying to be able to participate in this. So we're going to be using common sense when it comes to this. So you don't have to worry about that.
Marissa Parra is joining us now. It's one of these like sort of wow moments here for a lot of reasons here. The governor, of course, Republican governor of Florida there, says the Satanic Temple is not qualified to be a part of this procedure. Is there a legal mechanism to stop them from being involved as volunteer chaplains?
Great question, Hallie. And yeah, I do have to acknowledge it wouldn't be a day of covering Florida politics if we weren't talking about a headline like a showdown between the state's governor and the Satanic Temple. So let's get right to it. DeSantis seems confident that there won't be a showdown. That won't happen. In fact, look at his tweet that he put out not that long ago. He said that Satanism isn't a religion. He's very confident that they will not even qualify because it's not a religion. And in his tweet, you'll see an image. He has a circle and a strike through around the world Satanists. Again, he is very confident. But it's important to point out the bill's own sponsor, a Republican senator in Fort Pierce, said she was concerned about what the Satanic Temple might be able to do because of First Amendment religious freedoms. So that could potentially be the next chapter of this, Hallie. A court battle over what exactly defines religion. The Satanic Temple has already said that they would take this to court and fight against this under the guise of discrimination. But the Satanic Temple has also said that they are very confident that the Constitution is on their side here. Calling DeSantis's words today, some of them you just heard now, quote, empty grandstanding. And they also put this statement out in part saying they will move forward with training their satanic chaplains to place them in Florida public schools. But Hallie, also really important to remember that it is ultimately up to the individual schools on how they choose to move forward, who they choose to allow into their schools to meet with the kids.
Setting aside the potential of having, Satanists volunteering as chaplains in schools, there are some other concerns, and we touched on them briefly at the top of this discussion, more broadly, when it comes to the role overall of religion in public schools, right?
Right. And so this is something that we've seen open letters. We've seen open letters signed by, of course, not just faith groups. We've even seen chaplains sign in on that. But civil rights organizations, particularly the ACLU, they have been very, very vocal about this. Here's some of what they wrote in March, in part expressing frustrations and concerns about how this would infringe on religious freedoms among students. They said that this also opens the doors for students to be evangelized, especially in states like this one that have conservative Christian leadership. And as you can see on your screen there, their concern is about the lack of credentials and training required by these volunteer chaplains, Hallie. And I'll just end by saying that Texas passed a law just like this one last year. 14 states have introduced legislation just like this one just in the last year. So, Hallie, Florida, just the latest one to sign this bill into law, potentially not the last, just this year alone.
Super
Hallie?
Interesting. Marissa Parra live for us there in Florida. Thank you. Let's get you over now to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, Dickie Betts, of course, the guitarist, the co-founder of the Allman Brothers Band, has died at the age of 80. His manager telling Rolling Stone he died from cancer and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Betts wrote the hit song Ramblin' Man for the Allman Brothers Band and helped define Southern rock back in the 60s and 70s. Number 2, Google firing more than 24 workers today. Why? Allegedly for protesting the company's $1.2 billion contract to provide Israel with cloud and AI services. It comes after 9 employees were arrested a couple days ago for a sit-in at Google offices in Seattle, New York, and California. Google says that, I'm quoting here, physically impeding other employees' work is a clear violation of our policies. Number 3, the number of houses being sold in this country fell just about 4% last month because people are facing higher interest rates and higher prices for those homes. We saw drops in the West, South, and the Midwest. Only the Northeast saw sales go up. Here's the thing, and it's a little bit confusing. Even though sales are down, the median home price is up about 5% since last year. Number 4, Trader Joe's is recalling some of its packaged basil because of a salmonella outbreak. One person had to be hospitalized. There were at least a dozen other reports of people getting sick. The affected products, we just showed them there, the Infinity Herbs organic basil packages. They've been sold since the start of February. The head of the company says he's heartbroken. This product might have made people sick. Number 3, Prince Harry making a major change to his living situation, making it official, really, saying the U.S. is his primary residence, not the U.K., according to some new document filings. Now, remember, the Duke of Sussex moved to California back in 2020 with his American wife. They took a step back from their royal duties at the time. He made it seem like maybe the move would be only temporary, but you see the case. So listen, it is spring, right? It is pollen season, and if your allergies seem to be getting worse, that's not just in your head. It's real, it's super pollen, and it has doctors overwhelmed.
We have more patients coming in now with severe allergy symptoms. They're coming in sneezing, congested, coughing from the drip in the back of their throat.
And doctors say even people who have never had allergies before are getting affected this year. It's gotten so intense that regular allergy medication, like you might buy at the store, might not even work for everybody. Dr. Natalie Azar is joining us now. This is real, right? It's not just in our heads. Allergy season actually is getting worse. Why?
It is. You know, I think, Hallie, the easiest thing to tell people is that when you have very mild, very wet, very warm winters, that's kind of a perfect recipe for, especially in the spring, for trees to start blooming earlier. And I think there's one phenomenon that I think is really, really fascinating that people should understand. You know how we occasionally have like a really, really nice warm day in late February or early March, and then it gets cold again, and then we have one spiking warm day. That actually primes your immune system to be more sensitive and more reactive to pollen once you're kind of full on in pollen season once the spring actually hits. So you can go out and enjoy those nice days, but just beware that that can actually happen. And you know, a lot of people, Hallie, are like, well, I don't know, is it a cold or is it an allergy? And we have a list of allergic symptoms for people to take a look at. The one defining feature of allergy symptoms is itchiness. It's the itchy eyes, the itchy nose, and the itchy throat, and that will 100% of the time help you to distinguish between allergies and a cold or a mild flu.
You know, this idea, to pull more on this thread of super pollen, right? Because I was interested to hear that, I mean, not only, and like, just to pull back the curtain in my household, allergy sufferer, right? Yeah. My partner, not one. Until now, like until truly this season dealing with it. So like what I'm interested to hear is about how severe weather systems, like climate change is playing a part in this by breaking up pollen into tinier pieces that can infiltrate our systems even more easily.
Yeah, I mean, climate change is the sort of like the umbrella factor in all of this that is leading to these warmer winters that are really the culprit here. Every year we're like, this is the worst pollen season ever. This is the worst pollen season ever. And to the point about your husband, you can develop an allergy at any time in your life. So even if you were mostly a tree sufferer when you were younger, you might now be a grass sufferer in the summer or weed come the fall. So it's not like you're out of the woods if you haven't really had many symptoms over the years so far.
And on that super fun note, Dr. Natalie Azar, thank you very much for being the bearer of bad allergy news. Appreciate it. Thank you. To tonight's Original Now with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been watching. And tonight we take you to Idaho, a state that now bans abortions in nearly all cases after the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade a couple years ago. Some women who need medicine for things like miscarriages or inducing labor say they're struggling to get their hands on them because they can also be used in medical abortions. Here's Erica Edwards.
Give them a high five.
Children were part of Kristen and Lauren Colson's plan from the beginning.
We always knew that we would have a family.
But it hasn't been easy. In January, the Boise, Idaho couple miscarried for a 5th time.
We were hoping to see a heartbeat, and on ultrasound, we saw that I had a non-viable pregnancy.
Kristen's doctor wrote her a prescription for misoprostol, a drug that causes the uterus to contract, helpful during a miscarriage, which is the spontaneous loss of a pregnancy and can take weeks for the body to complete on its own.
Everybody processes grief differently, but for me, I like to have a plan. Choosing to use the medication, I can time when
this happens. Misoprostol can also be used during a medication abortion, a deliberate termination of a pregnancy. That's why Kristen believes her Walgreens pharmacist refused to give her the drug.
I was in shock, confused, dealing with this miscarriage. They told me that they didn't feel comfortable filling the misoprostol prescription at that dosage.
Idaho's Defense of Life Act went into effect in 2022 after the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. The state's law says that every person who performs or attempts to perform an abortion could be committing a felony punishable by a sentence of imprisonment up to 5 years.
The law isn't clear whether a pharmacist is committing a felony for dispensing the medication.
The threat of jail time is a real worry for pharmacists like Matt Murray.
Once you see a prescription for misoprostol, now a little alert goes off in the back of your head that says, well, maybe we need to make sure what this is used for.
Is this frustrating to you?
It's frustrating, and it takes time away from other things that we need to do. But ultimately, the fear is that people aren't getting the medical care that they're needing.
Pharmacists are understandably scared by these incredibly strict abortion laws that have been enacted, and they are afraid that they might be charged with a felony simply for doing their job.
Allison Tanner, senior legal counsel at the National Women's Law Center, says since the Supreme Court decision, they've heard from a number of women who say they were denied access to legally prescribed medications, including misoprostol.
Pharmacists were afraid about the new lay of the land under the law.
The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services has investigated complaints against some pharmacies, including Walgreens, which HHS says have been resolved. In a statement, Walgreens says it'll accommodate team members whose beliefs conflict with selling certain products and make sure another pharmacist can fill the prescription. Kristen's doctor was able to transfer her prescription to another Walgreens that filled it.
In Boise, I have other options and access to other pharmacies, and that may not be the case for a lot of people that went through what we went through across the state.
Erica Edwards is joining us now. So, Erica, you've laid out what happens in Idaho and the policy there, but what about other states? What are they doing?
Hey, Hallie, yeah, this is happening nationwide. Women across the country are telling us that they have been denied legal prescriptions. Now, the HHS has given guidance to pharmacies basically saying that refusing to prescribe certain medications to women can have negative health impacts and may violate civil rights laws. But it's not so clear to pharmacists like who we talked to in that piece, Matt Murray in Boise, who say, navigating this legal landscape is especially difficult for independent pharmacies who don't have the legal means to guide them through this process. We're left, Hallie, with pharmacists who'd rather play it safe and not give out these medications that could land them in trouble. Hallie.
Erica Edwards, thank you so much for bringing us that reporting right here on NBC News Now. NBC News covers hundreds of international stories every day, and because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our teams around the world have done it for you. Here's a look at what they're watching in a segment we call The Global. Out of Indonesia, a local airport shut down, canceling flights in the region, all because of that volcano eruption we told you about 24 hours ago here on this show. I want to show you here more stunning video. Look at that lightning, right? Bill Cairns talked about this yesterday. That eruption is sending lava, ash, especially way up in the air. We don't know how many passengers are left stranded at this airport, but officials have ordered more than 11,000 people to leave because of a potential tsunami risk if part of the volcano collapses. Out of the UK, Scotland's only clinic for treating transgender kids has announced it's pausing new prescriptions for puberty blockers. We told you last week how the UK's push to restrict gender-affirming care for minors is kicking in. Health officials say they want to provide the best care while also reviewing medical evidence that supports this treatment. They clarified patients already getting treatment will not be affected. And also out of the UK, Prince William stepping out again publicly for the first time since his wife Kate's cancer diagnosis. Remember, Princess Kate announced she had cancer. You see him, or is diagnosed with cancer, you see him at a food distribution center there representing the rest of the family. A lot of the royals have been absent from the British public because of their health problems, specifically King Charles, who's seeking treatment for cancer. We still don't know what kind. He also, a lot of folks watching him. When we come back, Caitlin Clark's Money Moves. The company is reportedly fighting over a partnership with one of basketball's biggest stars and what it means for the rest of the league. NBC News covers hundreds of other stories every day. And because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. Out of our Southern Bureau, look at this scary snake situation, all captured on camera. Oof. This is a mom and son just trying to leave home in Texas when this aggressive snake just like lunges at them while they're on their front porch. They're both okay, except for some bruises when they tripped and fell while running away. The snake is still out there. Also out of our Southern Bureau, this video out of North Carolina, a group of folks just pulling bear cubs out of a tree. Why? Apparently to take selfies. One of them ends up holding one of the bears, taking pictures, and then like dropping it a couple seconds later. Officials confronted the people taking the video. The cub went to a rehab center. Fortunately, is expected to be okay. And out of our Northeast Bureau, a Taco Bell manager saving a baby's life in Bucks County, PA. A mother was in the Taco Bell drive-thru when she noticed her baby struggling to breathe, turning blue. You see her jumping out. She's screaming for help. That's when the manager runs outside, starts doing chest compressions on the baby. That kiddo started to breathe again, was taken to the hospital for treatment. The mother calls the manager her guardian angel. Up next, it is Caitlin Clark's world, and we're all just living in it. We'll tell you about the huge deal she may reportedly be signing soon, now that she's a pro, and what it means for the rest of the league. So unless you live under a rock or perhaps in a cave somewhere, you probably know that later on tonight, Taylor Swift will drop her 11th studio album. I know. The whole world knows. Everybody knows it is like already a huge deal, and it's not even out yet. Spotify is announcing that the Tortured Poets department is officially the most pre-saved album countdown page ever. And whether you're a Swiftie or not, you've probably seen one of these so-called Easter eggs hyping up this album. They're literally on buildings. Murals of these QR codes, again, around the world. This is a global drop, and they all have different clues on them, with businesses jumping in on this kind of unprecedented moment. Apple Music launched a Swift scavenger hunt. You need a subscription to play, right? Spotify is launching a whole pop-up in LA. But one thing that probably wasn't planned, leaks of some of these songs. It got so bad that even X blocked searches. What makes this tricky? People don't even know if these quote-unquote leaked songs are real or fake. With AI, it's a whole new story. So here to break it down for us is USA Today Taylor Swift reporter. That's right, Brian West. Brian, we're so glad to have you on, a former NBC alum. Thank you for being on with us tonight.
Thank you so much, Hallie. We are about 6 hours and counting.
And everybody is counting. I mean, truly. And so that's what I want to get into, right? I want to get into your job in a second, but let's start with like the business impact that Taylor Swift is having. We have seen big album releases, even just this year, Beyonce with Cowboy Carter, but she's about the only one, right? The two of them are in a league of their own, a universe of their own when it comes to the attention on the music that they're producing. Talk us through that piece of it.
And what we've seen with Taylor especially is that she has a knack for Easter eggs, for bringing in a lot of her corporate sponsors or corporate partners to help kind of uncover or unleash this new project. And so we saw Spotify, as you announced, had a pop-up installation at the Grove in Los Angeles. Hidden in that pop-up display are book spines with the titles of the 20 tracks on this album. There is a globe there that has a pushpin in Miami, which is the next location for her U.S. domestic leg of the Eras Tour. She had a typewriter that had messages. She has song lyrics that are included in the cases. And so you see that across all these different platforms. On Apple Music, for 6 days, fans would have to search all the playlists to find which one was lowercase with specific capital letters. And that would spell out a phrase. We now know that is, we hereby conduct this post-mortem, which tells us that there's something to do with two. A lot of clocks, including the animation that Taylor Swift has released, have told us 2 o'clock, or postmortem is 2 hours after. So a lot of fans are again speculating. They are excited. They're thinking maybe something is going to happen. You're looking at the animation right now. This is the intern area. And that's where she says what's going to happen, the calendar, that we are going to see the first single, Fortnite, with Post Malone. It's going to have a music video that comes out tomorrow night. So it really just makes it fun for the fans to follow along, but also must be so exhausting for the singer and her team just to keep track of everything.
Do you think, quickly here, Brian, that this album is different from her others in terms of its release, its hype, et cetera?
What we know is that there's two collaborators, so Post Malone and Florence Welch from Florence and the Machine, but two co-writers, co-producers, Jack Antonoff and Aaron Dessner, have worked closely with the writer. We saw Aaron come in during the folklore era, and so he has really helped to kind of advance the writing, and same with Jack. He's been one of our producers sound since 1989.
I have to ask about you because you have what is maybe the most coveted job in all of Swiftie world, right? After you got it, the vice president of local news for USA Today talked about how you personally, Brian, have this balance between somebody with serious news chops and someone who understands everything about Taylor's world and the universe that you're stepping into. Talk to us about how this role has been and honestly, what you do next once her Eras tour is over.
That's a good question. So it is constant. I would say every day is completely different. I just woke up about an hour ago to get ready for this full marathon all-nighter of the release, and then tomorrow morning. It's been such a whirlwind to be able to travel with the Eras tour alongside it in Tokyo, Japan, in Melbourne, Australia, and Sydney. I'm going to be heading to Europe in May to see also if there are any changes. But it really is the dream, the job of my wildest dreams.
Brian, we're so glad to have you on. Thank you. So, like, what do you have, 16 Red Bulls to get ready for tonight? Is that the deal? Just all coffee
we're
constantly?
already starting now. A fortnight of Red Bulls.
Okay, very good. Brian, thank you so much for being on. That does it for us for this hour. We've got a lot more coverage picking up right now. We are coming on the air with a jury now picked and seated in a critical moment in the historic trial of a former president. All of it coming together in really just the last 90 minutes, setting up opening statements maybe as soon as Monday in the former president's case. Coming up, our breakdown of how the prosecution may try to frame that opening, what happens from here with the alternates, and who exactly are these everyday people picked to decide Donald Trump's fate. That's live from downtown Manhattan. Also tonight, new answers on how 911 went down for millions of Americans and the mystery still out there in one state, sending officials scrambling. Plus, why a bunch of Kennedys are not backing one of their own in the race for the White House. Instead, late today, coming out and endorsing President Biden. So how much does their famous family name really resonate with voters right now? Then the potential foreign aid fiasco on Capitol Hill, the House Speaker fighting to save his job and get billions for Ukraine and Israel. We'll tell you how even TikTok's playing into it. Plus, the new fight over religion in public schools, why Florida's governor is now going toe-to-toe with Satanists. You heard that right. That's later on in the show. Hey, I'm Hallie, and it is the first of what may be many milestone moments tonight in an unprecedented trial. The jury, 12 people, now seated in the criminal trial of Donald Trump, along with one alternate. They've got to pick 5 more alternates. The judge says he's hopeful they'll finish up tomorrow. 7 new members now added to this jury, including a male investment banker and a male security engineer. They were added because 2 people were taken off. One, an oncology nurse who said so much personal info got leaked, her friends figured out it was her on the jury. She's no longer on it. The other, this male IT consultant who was out for allegedly lying to the judge. Remember, it's not over yet. The magic number is 18, so you still have a few more to go. But all of it sets up the openings maybe as soon as Monday. This day overall, highlighting the challenges of a trial at this moment, an election year, for this person, Donald Trump, in this city, New York, with one dismissed juror. Talking more about that with our Yasmin Vasugian.
Everybody has biases and, you know, stereotypes in their mind. So you have to be a really, deep and, fair person, which is very hard to do, right?
So what about former President Trump? This is him walking out of court just within the last hour. You watched it live last hour right here on NBC News Now, accusing prosecutors, in his view, of being out of control, slamming the judge, even complaining about the temperature in the room. Very cold. Now, a lot of people said it was basically freezing in that room. Here's what Donald Trump did not say. Anything about the makeup of the jury, the 7 men and 5 women who will decide his fate. Vaughn Hilliard is outside the courthouse in Manhattan. That may be because that partial gag order has been put on the former president. We'll talk more about that next week when the judge is set to make a decision on any penalties for potential violations. But let's talk about what's happening now. This big milestone now, a jury picked and seated. And it sounds like Monday is when everybody thinks openings will begin.
Right. The starting lineup is set. They've just got to fill out the bench right now, the 6 alternatives that they've got left. And that's what the order of business is going to be tomorrow, Hallie. This is it was an afternoon that went from having just 5 jurors to suddenly having 13, and one of those being the alternate, 5 left to go here. And this is significant. These are going to be the 12 individuals that ultimately determine Donald Trump's legal fate here in New York City. It is going to be on them, despite all of the pressures that exist around them here, to ultimately make the determination on the evidence and testimony they hear over the next 6 to 8 weeks on what Donald Trump's fate is.
So, Vaughn, talk to us a little bit about what you heard from some of these prospective jurors. I mean, we're looking at this graphic here, and obviously, you know, I should note here, there was an admonition from the judge to members of the media, to members of the press who are watching this go down, to use common sense and not reveal too much information that could be revealing about these jurors. He seemed concerned about that. But it has been a process that really isn't over yet, right?
Right, and this is what makes Donald Trump such a unique criminal defendant, is that all of these potential jurors were asked the question, do you have strong opinions about Donald Trump? And every single one of the individuals who have been seated, the 12 plus 1, all said no. There was one woman who had actually been seated on Tuesday to be a juror, but showed up this morning at court and said that she didn't actually think any longer she could be, so she was dismissed and excused. I want to let you hear from one other dismissed juror that I talked to about the experience of walking in there and about being asked the question whether he could be fair and impartial. Take a listen.
Were I to be seated on the trial, it would be dishonest for me to withhold that information. But there's be no way that Blanche, who's not going to rely on the kindness of strangers, would permit me to be on the jury.
Mark, that man, an honest man who came in and said he could not be fair and impartial, but they were waiting through. You know, some of the folks said that they could be, and when the defense team for Donald Trump went through the social media accounts of some of these folks, they found posts that were not too kind to the former president, and several of those individuals, they were dismissed and excused because of those past social media posts.
Is it raining out there? I can't tell. It looks like it's wet behind you.
It's been a bleak day, Hallie. It's been a bleak day out here. And inside the courtroom,
people
Donald
out?
Trump was complaining about it being cold.
Well, that's what I mean. But like,
people
are
out and about. It's
that's
not
what I'm
quite a
asking.
chaotic...
Because, like, here's one person who we know is out there. Why did George Santos, you know, show up to the court today? I mean, all of it gets to something that we've talked about this week, and you're seeing a picture of George Santos walking in now, I guess, to the courthouse. We've been getting to this. This is a spectacle. I mean, it is an unprecedented trial. It is a trial that is making history, and it is also kind of in a weird way become a bit of a tourist attraction. Is that fair?
Right. It's kind of a chaotic scene. George Santos is sort of this odd character in our American politics the last 2 years. And, of course, I guess naturally he'd find himself outside of this courthouse. But definitely there's been folks that we have met that have come by just to go and see it here. I wouldn't call it a chaotic scene here, but, you know, it's not lost on anybody, especially in lower Manhattan, that the former president of the United States and the potential future one, at least Republican presumptive nominee, is going to be here for several more weeks inside of that courtroom, Hallie.
Vaughn Hilliard live for us there in downtown Manhattan. Among it all, on this, as you say, bleak day, Vaughn. Thank you, friend. Appreciate it. So listen, let's take a step back. Remember what this case is about. Okay, Donald Trump facing these 34 felony counts, accused of falsifying business records, basically lying on business documents, allegedly to cover up payments he made to former adult film star Stormy Daniels during the 2016 campaign. Now, in plain English, as you see this web here of all of Donald Trump's legal issues, there's a lot of people, including us, who have shorthanded this particular one as like the quote-unquote hush money trial. That's what you'll sometimes hear. Oh, this is the hush money trial. Some legal experts have suggested it is the weakest case because they say, okay, if he lied on these internal records, what is the harm to the public? But the Manhattan District Attorney says it goes way beyond that. Here's the breakdown. In the orbit of Donald Trump's trials, the one in New York has headlines that seem tailor-made for the tabloids. A possible sex scandal involving Mr. Trump, an ex-porn star, Stormy Daniels, and $130,000 in so-called hush money payments paid to her by his former fixer, Michael Cohen. Mr. Trump denies having a sexual relationship with Daniels, but the alleged crime recorded in checks signed by Mr. Trump to reimburse Cohen. And Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg suggests there's more to it than so-called hush money.
So it's an election interference case.
Not interference in 2020, but the first time around, the 2016 election. Bragg says those checks, allegedly to try and silence Stormy Daniels, were part of a scheme by Mr. Trump to keep the alleged affair from voters in 2016.
That payment was to hide damaging information from the voting public.
Bragg never actually even called it hush money when he announced the charges. He argues then candidate Trump did this to cover up other crimes, like the campaign finance laws Michael Cohen pleaded guilty to in 2018 and served 3 years in a federal prison for. The DA repeatedly making the case publicly. This goes beyond a sex scandal.
The case is not, the core of it's not, money for sex. We would say it's about conspiring to corrupt a presidential election and then, lying in New York business records to cover it up.
That framing echoed in part by the judge, Juan Merchan, who in a court filing wrote he'd tell a jury that these allegations have to do with falsified business records to conceal an agreement with others to unlawfully influence the 2016 presidential election. All of it a potential preview of how the prosecutor's opening statements may go. Okay, so that's the prosecutor's case. What about the Trump team, right? What might the defense say? Well, according to legal filings, they may say something like, look, Donald Trump just didn't want to be embarrassed. It has nothing to do with influencing voters. And more importantly, they say that means it is not illegal. We will see how this begins to be framed, starting maybe as early as Monday. We'll have coverage of that historic trial right here on NBC News Now. To some other headlines tonight, and there are plenty of them. Let's start with that 911 system outage on Oahu in Hawaii. Not even 24 hours after a separate outage left millions of people across 4 other states without a way to get in touch with first responders overnight via landlines. We don't know if these 2 outages are related at all, but it comes as we're getting some answers about what may have happened overnight. It looks like the issue was related, at least partly, to a communications and telecom company called Lumen Technologies. In a statement to NBC News, a spokesperson apologized to customers in these 3 states, Nevada, South Dakota, Nebraska. They said the outage happened when a third-party company was installing a pole, causing what some officials say was an unprecedented situation.
To our knowledge, we have never experienced an outage of this magnitude or duration.
Here's what else we know tonight. Law enforcement officials tell us there's nothing to indicate that this was part of a cyber attack or something somebody did on purpose. The FCC is looking into this, but here's what we don't know. What the root of the issue may have been down in Texas, which was one of the states affected by this outage, because Lumen Technologies says it doesn't provide 911 services there. Brian Chung is joining us now. And what's interesting, this wasn't like same in all of these states, right? For some places, 911 services were only down if you tried to call on cell phone. For other places, I mean, it was kind of a patchwork here.
Yeah, and that's why it's important to parse out that we don't know what happened in Texas. We don't know what happened for that 20-minute outage in Hawaii. But what we do know is that in the 3 states that were affected in Nebraska, South Dakota, and also Nevada, that those were tied to Lumen Technologies, which is a telecom communicator, having gone down because of a wire that was cut because of a third party, not Lumen, trying to do repair on a light pole. It's simple as something like that that could take down these emergency services, which had overnight, in some cases, many states experiencing difficulty in reaching 911 emergency services. Now, it's interesting because this is really highlighted that there are instances and might be instances where you can't reach 911, in which case emergency providers like, for example, the fire departments and also police departments have said, first off, jot down the local number for your police and your fire department. It's 10 number digit, and that's not 911. And they also advise trying a landline or other types of ways of reaching out, like text messaging, for example, in which case you actually can text 911 depending on whether or not your locality offers that. And one last point here that's so important, Hallie, there were instances during this outage where people were trying to dial 911 to test if emergency services were being active. Do not do that. We saw the same thing play out when AT&T had issues 2 months ago. Only dial 911 if you're actually in an emergency.
That's such a good point. You mentioned that AT&T outage a couple of months ago. Is there a broader question mark here about the vulnerability of some of these systems?
Yeah, and again, I want to emphasize that what happened today does not appear to be a hack. It simply seemed to be that repair pole cutting a line. But there have been instances where the Department of Homeland Security has said, look, there's an upgrade that's trying to be done to 911 services nationwide. Could that be subject to a hack some point down the line? That's very much a concern. But again, not related to what we saw happen today, Hallie.
Brian Chung, thank you very much. To Maryland now, where a high school student is in police custody, charged with threatening mass violence in connection with an alleged school shooting plan. This is in Montgomery County, right outside D.C. according to court documents obtained by NBC News. Here are some of the documents here alleging that 18-year-old Andrea Yee, who goes by Alex, wrote a 129-page document that includes a strategy on how to carry out the attack, even contemplating targeting an elementary school, allegedly wanting to be famous. We expect some more details, possibly as soon as tomorrow in a news conference. But Yamiche Alcindor has made her way to Montgomery County. Tell us more about this investigation, how it unfolded, and where this goes from here.
Well, this, Hallie, is really a striking and disturbing situation here. And to understand how this all is unfolding, we have to go all the way back to March 3rd. So we should put up a timeline for folks. That's when a witness contacted Baltimore County Police and said that Alex Yee was writing a manifesto that was disturbing to them and that made them feel like a school shooting was imminent. Then on March 5th, police obtained a search warrant for Yee's Gmail account that was tied to that document. On March 5th, Yee messaged on Discord, which was an internet site that he actually ended up being pushed off of and blocked from because he was posting about violence. And he wrote on that internet site, "My friend reported me to the police for a book I'm writing." March 6th, Yee is hospitalized. March 21st, there's a search of Yee's home. And then on Tuesday, Yee is arrested. And police are saying that this manifesto, this 129-page document that Yee says was a work of fiction, that really is, it contains such disturbing language that they are worried that this was something that was actually going to be a blueprint for a school shooting. I also want to put up that Montgomery County Public Schools, they're weighing in here. I want to read a bit of their statement. They say the charges are extremely serious, involving alleged threats to harm others. The student, who has not physically attended a Montgomery County Public School since the fall of 2022, has been actively participating in lessons through a virtual program called Online Pathways to Graduation. So there you have the high school and the school district there saying while the student was not physically in school, they were still part of the school community. So definitely going to continue to watch this. Yee, as we understand it, is in custody and is now awaiting a bond hearing. Hallie?
Yamiche Alcindor live for us there in Maryland. Thank you. A big deal moment tonight for a big deal family in American politics, with the Kennedys coming out today against one of their own and endorsing President Biden's re-election instead. Watch.
President Biden has been a champion for all the rights and freedoms that my father and uncles stood for. That's why nearly every single grandchild of Joe and Rose Kennedy supports Joe Biden.
15 Kennedys there. You see them all, including Carrie. You just heard from her. She's the sister of RFK Jr., who is, of course, running that third-party race. Carrie Kennedy saying that President Biden, who you see on stage, represents a vote to, in her words, save our democracy. This endorsement's coming at an interesting time in an interesting race, as some Democrats worry that RFK Jr.'s candidacy could hurt former President Trump. RFK Jr. himself responding on X, saying, "I am pleased my family is politically active." He says, "It's a family tradition. We are divided in our opinions, but united in our love for each other." Mike Memley is joining us now, and it is so interesting for multiple reasons, right? Number one, because of the family involved here, because it is the Kennedys. Number two, because for any candidate, having siblings come out, right, and protest your candidacy in essence, or at least endorse your opponent is significant, particularly when that candidate has leaned on his family history.
Yeah, Hallie, just think about if Valerie, Frank, and Jimmy Biden came out this week and endorsed Donald Trump. what a bombshell that would be. And for the Biden campaign, you can understand why this moment is so significant. You just need to look at the polls, right? There's the Quinnipiac poll this week that shows if it's a head-to-head, Joe Biden versus Donald Trump, Biden has a 3-point lead. But when you insert Robert F. Kennedy Jr. into the mix, you see both candidates drop down into the 30s and Kennedy with a significant share of the vote. The same finding in a Reuters poll that had Kennedy up at 16%. So you see what is at stake in terms of the Biden campaign with Kennedy as a political spoiler. I think what's so fascinating is the way the Kennedy family is viewing this. They see this as a potential legacy spoiler for the family. This was an event that was weeks in the making. You can remember that image we saw of generations of Kennedys with President Biden in the Rose Garden. This was in the works even well before that. The Biden campaign saying they're taking their cues from the Kennedy family. As much as they want to be involved, they will be involved going forward.
What's also interesting is the place where this is happening. In Philadelphia today, after 2 other days, so this is the 3rd straight day that he has campaigned, specifically in Pennsylvania, all while former President Trump is sitting in a criminal trial in New York, right? Talk about the potential benefits of the campaign and how they see it.
Well, the Biden campaign really sees this, call it what you want, the counter-programming, the split-screen strategy. The message they want to convey this week, knowing that Trump is going to dominate most of the national headlines, is one, to get a lot of local headlines in the most important battleground state to Joe Biden, which is Pennsylvania. But you can really break down the political geography that Biden covered this week to look at some of the issues and how they see this race. Scranton, of course, President Biden's hometown. He sees that as sort of the home base for his economic messaging. He talked about the fact that Trump views the economy through Mar-a-Lago or Park Avenue. He sees it through the lens of the people he grew up with in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Then you see Pittsburgh. That's been a political home base for President Biden. He was with union workers. He sees himself as the most pro-labor president, an important stop there to talk about China. And then there was, of course, today, Philadelphia. That's kind of the stakes of this election, the democracy stakes. The Kennedys helped him to make that message today. You also saw him playing both sides of a very heated political debate in Pennsylvania. The president stopped today at a Wawa. He got a hoagie and a shake. This was just a day after he stopped at a Sheetz in Pittsburgh. Which side are you on, Mr. President? I think this is a real question.
Please tell me somebody asked him.
Well, we haven't heard that yet. You know, this will be something maybe he's going to get the next time he goes to Pennsylvania. I think I know where you fall on this
Just so
issue.
people, Western PA, home to Sheetz, the pale imitation of Eastern Pennsylvania's Wawa. A Wawa, of course, that has infiltrated, from New Jersey all the way down here to D.C. Did you, oh, you're in D.C., you didn't place an order, but I'm going to send you like an Italian hoagie over from Wawa to the White House, ma'am.
Well, Hallie, as somebody who spent a lot of my youth, the summers on the Jersey Shore, I was a Wawa guy for a long time, but covering the 2008 campaign especially, I spent a lot of time in rural Pennsylvania.
Nope.
And Sheetz was kind of that beacon at night when you you needed a good meal. And so I don't know.
Okay.
I guess this is my last appearance on Hallie Jackson.
It's been a lovely final appearance for you on this program. Mike Memoli, Sheetz betrayer, thank you so much. Wawa forever here on this show. Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. All right, listen, we got to take you out west because there's some breaking news that's happening now. We're just getting this into us here, so I want to grab some information on this because we're seeing some protests now at universities in some of the country's biggest cities, not just New York, but L.A. as well. Let me start with New York. Look at Columbia University. So this is police coming in. We've told you about this over the last 24 hours, these huge crowds of students that kind of camped out on the big lawn in front of the university. The school says students refused to disperse, so now more than 100 have been arrested. But go to the West Coast now. That's where it's happening as we speak. USC students, look at this, out protesting the university's decision to not allow a speech from this year's pro-Palestinian valedictorian, a valedictorian who has expressed views that are pro-Palestinian. Now, the school says the decision has nothing to do with freedom of speech. They say the main issues are campus safety and security. I want to bring in now KNBC correspondent Christian Casares, who is joining us from the USC campus. Christian, you're right in the thick of it. Tell us what it's like.
Well, I can tell you this group, as you can hear them, they are chanting, "Let her speak," and that has been the mood here for about an hour now. I can tell you this group came together fairly quickly, about an hour, and they came together here right in the middle of USC's campus, right by Tommy Trojan. About 20 minutes ago, this group that you see here, they mobilized. They went around the campus here. They did a short walk, and it was a silent march. But I can tell you that students here, they say they received messages from fellow students to cancel their school attendance this afternoon to participate and support the request to reinstate the valedictorian's speech. Now, participants were asked to wear hoodies and a mask, which is the reason why many of them have that on right now. But again, this is a silent march. I was telling you that they were walking around the campus about 20 minutes ago, and they really didn't chant. They didn't really say much. They were all quiet. I talked to a couple of students along the way, and they said that they really did like the fact that this was silent. It really does speak to the fact of why they are out here. Now, at the center of this is Asna Tabasan. This is USC's 2024 valedictorian. She is a fourth-year student from Chino Hills with a major in biomedical engineering and a minor in resistance to genocide. Now, the university canceled her speech after they say concerns sparked over a link that she shared, but did not author on her social media that they say contains anti-Semitic language. Well, recently, the first-generation South Asian American Muslim told NBC4, our affiliate here in Los Angeles, in a statement that she was disappointed in USC's decision to cancel her graduation speech during the ceremony. She says that this is basically a campaign of hate meant to silence her voice. I did get a chance to speak to a spokesperson from USC just moments ago, and they said that they still are standing on that on that stance to not allow her to participate in the ceremony, which is coming up on May 10th. But again, this is a silent march that is just getting underway. It's been about an hour now. I can tell you it's roughly about maybe 200 students. There's also, I understand, some faculty that are here. But again, they're very passionate about this. And this is something that has been going on for about a week now. So, of course, this is just something that both on social media and, of course, here on campus, students have been voicing their thoughts about this this fellow student, that they are fighting for her to go and have her speech said during the ceremony, which is, again, coming up on May 10th.
Christian Casares, we're glad to have you out there reporting on all of it live for us tonight from Los Angeles, again, from our affiliate KNBC. Thank you, Christian. Appreciate it. Let's bring you back here to Washington, because right now this really big fight over money is picking up more steam on Capitol Hill. And there's a big question tonight, right? Can the House Speaker get these $95 billion foreign aid packages for Israel and Ukraine? Can he get those packages done without losing his job? That is totally a potential, right? That is a live ball at the moment, with some members of Johnson's own party, Mike Johnson's own party, threatening to kick him out. Speaker Johnson himself late today shutting down talk about changing the rules to make it harder to kick him out of his position, a position, by the way, he's only held for like 6 months. And in the hallways, Johnson's telling our team that his whole speakership thing, this whole threat to his job, that is not even his biggest worry right now.
Sir, have you decided on proceeding with changes to the motion to vacate rules? Speaker Johnson.
No, we're focused on the supplemental right now.
All right, so he says he's focused on the legislation. So let's talk about what those bills would do. Israel's getting ready to retaliate against Iran. Ukraine says without this money, they will lose the war with Russia if they do not have U.S. support. There's also a TikTok component, making the whole thing even more complicated, because the House is trying to package up those foreign aid bills with a potential ban on TikTok, a ban that would go into effect unless TikTok's Chinese owner decides to sell the app first. Obviously, TikTok's not thrilled. In a new statement, they say this is a cover that'll devastate millions. Sahil Kapoor is joining us now. Let's talk about these two things, right, in two sort of different ways of thinking about it. The personnel drama with Speaker Johnson, and then the policy drama with all of these foreign aid bills and the TikTok thing. What is going on with Mike Johnson, right? In other words, if these bills pass on Saturday night, does it mean he could be out of a job come Monday?
It's a tale as old as this Congress itself, Hallie. Speaker Johnson has a wafer-thin majority of Republicans in the House of Representatives. He's dealing with a Democratic Senate and a Democratic president, and a very rebellious right flank that does not want him to compromise with Democrats, specifically on the issue of Ukraine aid. Now, this is all very plausible that this bill gets through. He's come up with a creative process that would trigger 4 separate votes on 4 bills: Israel, Ukraine, assistance for the Indo-Pacific, and finally this hodgepodge of national security priorities, which includes a potential TikTok ban. Let's show a graphic of what exactly that provision in that bill would do. It would require TikTok's owners to sell TikTok, so it's no longer controlled by ByteDance, the Beijing-owned Chinese company, within 9 months. That's a shift from the earlier bill, which required it to be sold within 6 months. The president would also have authority to extend that 9-month window to a year. And if the sale does not go through, then TikTok would be banned in the United States. That's paired with some other national security measures in that final bill that Johnson's put out, including new sanctions on Iran, providing some of Ukraine's assistance in the form of a forgivable loan, and the Repo Act, which would empower the White House to seize Russian assets in the states and help pay for Ukraine reconstruction, the Ukraine assistance. All of this has a good chance of getting passed, but first Johnson's got to get this through the Rules Committee and get this through the floor, the process on the floor, so it can trigger the votes. He's going to need Democrats for that, and he's got to do this delicately, because Democrats usually, the minority party usually does not get involved in the processes of these things, and his right-wing members certainly do not want him to work with Democrats on it.
So then timeline-wise, what are we thinking?
His goal is to get this done by Saturday evening.
Okay.
That was about 72 hours since the bills came out. He likes to give them time to read it, and beyond that, as soon as the Rules Committee can trigger the process, they will move to the House floor, begin. He says there are going to be votes on some amendments, but by Saturday, if his plan works out, by Saturday evening, these bills should be passed and headed over to the Senate, where they will have escape velocity because there's a lot of determination to pass aid to Ukraine and Israel. Hallie?
Sahil Kapoor live for us on Capitol Hill. Lots to cover for you, friend. Thank you. Lots more here on the show as well, including cutting the cord, the bizarre reason that travelers are facing some big delays out west. Plus, college athletes cashing in, the new law that may have student sports stars rolling in it. But there's a catch. A potential fight now brewing between Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and the Satanic Temple. That is not a misspeak. That is actually what the deal is down south. It has to do with this bill you're seeing DeSantis just signed into law that would let Florida public schools bring in volunteer chaplains as a resource for students. It's controversial for a bunch of reasons. Like, critics say kids could end up getting religious advice they don't want, or feel uncomfortable if the chaplains have a different religious background than they do. Case in point, the Satanic Temple tells our team they're planning on training and placing their own chaplains in Florida schools. The governor's talking about that today. He says that is not going to happen. Watch.
We're not playing those games in Florida. That is not a religion. That is not qualifying to be able to participate in this. So we're going to be using common sense when it comes to this. So you don't have to worry about that.
Marissa Parra is joining us now. It's one of these, like, sort of wow moments here for a lot of reasons here. The governor, of course, Republican governor of Florida there, says the Satanic Temple is not qualified to be a part of this procedure. Is there a legal mechanism to stop them from being involved as volunteer chaplains?
Great question, Hallie. And yeah, I do have to acknowledge it wouldn't be a day of covering Florida politics if we weren't talking about a headline like a showdown between the state's governor and the Satanic Temple. So let's get right to it. DeSantis seems confident that there won't be a showdown. That won't happen. In fact, look at his tweet that he put out not that long ago. He said that Satanism isn't a religion. He's very confident that they will not even qualify because it's not a religion. And in his tweet, you'll see an image. He has a circle and a strike through around the world Satanists. Again, he is very confident. But it's important to point out the bill's own sponsor, a Republican senator in Fort Pierce, said she was concerned about what the Satanic Temple might be able to do because of First Amendment religious freedoms. So that could potentially be the next chapter of this, Hallie. A court battle over what exactly defines religion. The Satanic Temple has already said that they would take this to court and fight against this under the guise of discrimination. But the Satanic Temple has also said that they are very confident that the Constitution is on their side here. Calling DeSantis's words today, some of them you just heard now, quote, empty grandstanding. And they also put this statement out in part saying they will move forward with training their satanic chaplains to place them in Florida public schools. But Hallie, also really important to remember that it is ultimately up to the individual schools on how they choose to move forward, who they choose to allow into their schools to meet with the kids.
Setting aside the potential of having, you know, Satanists volunteering as chaplains in schools, there are some other concerns, and we touched on them briefly at the top of this discussion, more broadly, when it comes to the role overall of religion in public schools, right?
Right. And so this is something that we've seen open letters. We've seen open letters signed by, of course, not just faith groups. We've even seen chaplains sign in on that. But civil rights organizations, particularly the ACLU, they have been very, very vocal about this. Here's some of what they wrote in March, in part expressing frustrations and concerns about how this would infringe on religious freedoms among students. They said that this also opens the doors for students to be evangelized, especially in states like this one that have conservative Christian leadership. And as you can see on your screen there, their concern is about the lack of credentials and training required by these volunteer chaplains, Hallie. And I'll just end by saying that Texas passed a law just like this one last year. 14 states have introduced legislation just like this one just in the last year. So, Hallie, Florida, just the latest one to sign this bill into law, potentially not the last, just this year alone.
Super
Hallie?
interesting. Marissa Parra live for us there in Florida. Thank you. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, Dickie Betts, of course, a guitarist and co-founder of the Allman Brothers Band. He has died at the age of 80. His manager tells Rolling Stone he died from cancer and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Betts wrote that hit song Ramblin' Man for the Allman Brothers Band, and he really helped define Southern rock back in the 60s and 70s. Number 2, police are investigating whether Ye, the rapper formerly known as Kanye West, was involved in an alleged battery. LA police were called to a scene early yesterday morning, but say that Ye was gone when police got there. His chief of staff tells NBC News this incident happened after Ye's wife was allegedly, in their words, physically assaulted. Number 3, the Sacramento airport seeing some huge delays after some AT&T wires were cut, apparently on purpose, according to officials. This happened at a utility pole 2 miles away from the airport. Police haven't figured out who's responsible yet, but they say it looks like somebody who knew what they were doing. Service has been restored. Obviously, flights are getting back in order now. Number 4, college athletes in Virginia may soon be able to get paid directly by their schools because of those NIL deals, name, image, likeness. They're not going to get paid for playing, but they can be paid for showing up in marketing campaigns. It's supposed to start in July, but probably won't take effect because current NCAA rules still stop athletes from signing NIL agreements with their own players. Leaders in Virginia say the law will give them a leg up if and when those NCAA rules change. Number 5, Starbucks is gearing up to roll out new disposable cups in a push to try to cut down on the amount of plastic we all throw out. The company says the cups will be made of up to 20% less plastic than what they use now. Comes as the company's sales of cold drinks, obviously that's what they're serving those plastic things for, they've boomed. More people drinking those iced lattes. Summertime, man. Coming up, why laws in some states have women facing off with their pharmacists. That's next. Plus, evacuating an eruption. We're bringing you to Indonesia as thousands scramble to get to safety. To tonight's Original Now with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been watching. And tonight we take you to Idaho, a state that now bans abortions in nearly all cases after the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade a couple years ago. Some women who need medicine for things like miscarriages or inducing labor say they're struggling to get their hands on them because they can also be used in medical abortions. Here's Erica Edwards.
Give them a high five.
Children were part of Kristen and Lauren Colson's plan from the beginning.
We always knew that we would have a family.
But it hasn't been easy. In January, the Boise, Idaho couple miscarried for a 5th time.
We were hoping to see a heartbeat, and on ultrasound, we saw that I had a non-viable pregnancy.
Kristen's doctor wrote her a prescription for misoprostol, a drug that causes the uterus to contract, helpful during a miscarriage, which is the spontaneous loss of a pregnancy and can take weeks for the body to complete on its own.
Everybody processes grief differently, but for me, I like to have a plan. Choosing to use the medication, I can time when this happens.
Misoprostol can also be used during a medication abortion, a deliberate termination of a pregnancy. That's why Kristen believes her Walgreens pharmacist refused to give her the drug.
I was in shock, confused, dealing with this miscarriage. They told me that they didn't feel comfortable filling the misoprostol prescription at that dosage.
Idaho's Defense of Life Act went into effect in 2022 after the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. The state's law says that every person who performs or attempts to perform an abortion could be committing a felony punishable by a sentence of imprisonment up to 5 years.
The law isn't clear whether a pharmacist is committing a felony for dispensing the medication.
The threat of jail time is a real worry for pharmacists like Matt Murray.
Once you see a prescription for misoprostol, now a little alert goes off in the back of your head that says, well, maybe we need to make sure what this is used for.
Is this frustrating to you?
It's frustrating, and it takes time away from other things that we need to do. But ultimately, the fear is that people aren't getting the medical care that they're needing.
Pharmacists are understandably scared by these incredibly strict abortion laws that have been enacted, and they are afraid that they might be charged with a felony simply for doing their job.
Allison Tanner, senior legal counsel at the National Women's Law Center, says since the Supreme Court decision, they've heard from a number of women who say they were denied access to legally prescribed medications, including misoprostol.
Pharmacists were afraid about the new lay of the land under the law.
The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services has investigated complaints against some pharmacies, including Walgreens, which HHS says have been resolved. In a statement, Walgreens says it'll accommodate team members whose beliefs conflict with selling certain products and make sure another pharmacist can fill the prescription. Kristen's doctor was able to transfer her prescription to another Walgreens that filled it.
In Boise, I have other options and access to other pharmacies, and that may not be the case for a lot of people that went through what we went through across the state.
Erica Edwards is joining us now. So, Erica, you've laid out what happens in Idaho and the policy there, but what about other states? What are they doing?
Hey, Hallie, yeah, you know, this is happening nationwide. Women across the country are telling us that they have been denied legal prescriptions. Now, the HHS has given guidance to pharmacies basically saying that refusing to prescribe certain medications to women can have negative health impacts and may violate civil rights laws. But it's not so clear to pharmacists like who we talked to in that piece, Matt Murray in Boise, who say, you know, navigating this legal landscape is especially difficult for independent pharmacies who don't have the legal means to guide them through this process. We're left, Hallie, with pharmacists who'd rather play it safe and not give out these medications that could land them in trouble. Hallie.
Erica Edwards, thank you so much for bringing us that reporting right here on NBC News Now. NBC News covers hundreds of international stories every day, and because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our teams around the world have done it for you. Here's a look at what they're watching in a segment we call The Global. Out of Indonesia, a local airport shut down, canceling flights in the region, all because of that volcano eruption we told you about 24 hours ago here on this show. I want to show you here more stunning video. Look at that lightning, right? Bill Cairns talked about this yesterday. That eruption is sending lava, ash, especially way up in the air. We don't know how many passengers are left stranded at this airport, but officials have ordered more than 11,000 people to leave because of a potential tsunami risk if part of the volcano collapses. Out of the UK, Scotland's only clinic for treating transgender kids has announced it's pausing new prescriptions for puberty blockers. I told you last week how the UK's push to restrict gender-affirming care for minors is kicking in. Health officials say they want to provide the best care while also reviewing medical evidence that supports this treatment. They clarified patients already getting treatment will not be affected. And also out of the UK, Prince William stepping out again publicly for the first time since his wife Kate's cancer diagnosis. Remember, Princess Kate announced she had cancer. You see him, or is diagnosed with cancer, you see him at a food distribution center there representing the rest of the family. A lot of the royals have been absent from the British public because of their health problems, specifically King Charles, who's seeking treatment for cancer. We still don't know what kind. He also, a lot of folks watching him. When we come back, Caitlin Clark's money moves. The company is reportedly fighting over a partnership with one of basketball's biggest stars and what it means for the rest of the league. So unless you live under a rock or perhaps in a cave somewhere, you probably know that later on tonight, Taylor Swift will drop her 11th studio album. I know. The whole world knows. Everybody knows. It is like already a huge deal, and it's not even out yet. Spotify is announcing that the Tortured Poets department is officially the most pre-saved album countdown page ever. And whether you're a Swiftie or not, you've probably seen one of these so-called Easter eggs hyping up this album. They're literally on buildings. Murals of these QR codes, again, around the world. This is a global drop, and they all have different clues on them, with businesses jumping in on this kind of unprecedented moment. Apple Music launched a Swift scavenger hunt. You need a subscription to play, right? Spotify is launching a whole pop-up in LA. But one thing that probably wasn't planned, leaks of some of these songs. It got so bad that even X blocked searches. What makes this tricky? People don't even know if these quote-unquote leaked songs are real or fake. With AI, it's a whole new story. So here to break it down for us is USA Today Taylor Swift reporter. That's right, Brian West. Brian, we're so glad to have you on, former NBC alum. Thank you for being on with us tonight.
Thank you so much, Hallie. We are about 6 hours and counting.
And everybody is counting. I mean, truly. And so that's what I want to get into, right? I want to get into your job in a second, but let's start with like the business impact that Taylor Swift is having. We have seen big album releases, even just this year, Beyonce with Cowboy Carter, but she's about the only one, right? The two of them are in a league of their own, a universe of their own when it comes to the attention on the music that they're producing. Talk us through that piece of it.
And what we've seen with Taylor especially is that she has a knack for Easter eggs, for bringing in a lot of her corporate sponsors or corporate partners to help kind of uncover or unleash this new project. And so we saw Spotify, as you announced, had a pop-up installation at the Grove in Los Angeles. Hidden in that pop-up display are book spines with the titles of the 20 tracks on this album. There is a globe there that has a pushpin in Miami, which is the next location for her U.S. domestic leg of the Eras tour. She had a typewriter that had messages. She has song lyrics that are included in the cases. And so you see that across all these different platforms. On Apple Music, for 6 days, fans would have to search all the playlists to find which one was lowercase with specific capital letters. And that would spell out a phrase. We now know that is, we hereby conduct this post-mortem, which tells us that there's something to do with 2. A lot of clocks, including the animation that Taylor Swift has released, have told us 2 o'clock, or postmortem is 2 hours after. So a lot of fans are again speculating. They are excited. They're thinking maybe something is going to happen. You're looking at the animation right now. This is the intern area. And that's where she says what's going to happen, the calendar, that we are going to see the first single, Fortnite, with Post Malone. It's going to have a music video that comes out tomorrow night. So it really just makes it fun for the fans to follow along, but also must be so exhausting for the singer and her team just to keep track of everything.
Do you think, quickly here, Brian, that this album is different from her others in terms of its release, its hype, et cetera?
What we know is that there's 2 collaborators, so Post Malone and Florence Welch from Florence and the Machine, but 2 co-writers, co-producers, Jack Antonoff and Aaron Dessner, have worked closely with the writer. We saw Aaron come in during the folklore era, and so he has really helped to kind of advance the writing, and same with Jack. He's been one of her producers' sound since 1989.
I have to ask about you, because you have what is maybe the most coveted job in all of Swiftie world, right? After you got it, the vice president of local news for USA Today talked about how you personally, Brian, have this balance between somebody with serious news chops and someone who understands everything about Taylor's world and the universe that you're stepping into. Talk to us about how this role has been, and honestly, what you do next once her Eras tour is over.
That's a good question. So it is constant. I would say every day is completely different. I just woke up about an hour ago to get ready for this full marathon all-nighter of the release, and then tomorrow morning. It's been such a whirlwind to be able to travel with the Eras tour alongside it in Tokyo, Japan, in Melbourne, Australia, and Sydney. I'm going to be heading to Europe in May to see also if there are any changes. But it really is the dream, the job of my wildest dreams.
Brian, we're so glad to have you on. Thank you. So, like, what do you have, 16 Red Bulls to get ready for tonight? Is that the deal? Just all coffee?
Oh, we're
constantly?
already starting now. A fortnight of Red Bulls.
Okay, very good. Brian, thank you so much for being on. That does it for us for this hour. We've got a lot more coverage picking up right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app, or follow us on social media.